Welcome to Meet the Podcasters, the show where I sit down and talk to successful podcast hosts about their craft. My guests today are Amy and Nick Thomson, hosts of the Pho Travel Podcast and co-founders of ANT Podcast Management. On Pho, Amy and Nick set out to take listeners on a journey as they document their experiences traveling to different countries all over the world and immersing themselves in the local cultures. And the great thing about them is, if they don't like somewhere, they'll tell you up front. They're not going to sugarcoat it and tell you everything is great when it actually wasn't all that. Obviously, with everything that's gone on with the pandemic over the past 12, 14 months, they had to put the show on hiatus until they're able to get back traveling without restrictions again. But over that time off, they've really ramped up the growth of their podcast production and editing company, ANT Podcast Management. Here at Podcast.co, we've actually worked with Amy and Nick on several projects, and the quality of the work really speaks for itself. It's clear to me and the rest of the team here that they take a lot of pride in what they do, and both of them have a real ear for detail. And when it comes to editing and post-production, they've really got their processes nailed down and refined. Of all the episodes of this show I recorded, I think this one has some of the most practical, hands-on advice you can apply to your own show to help you produce better content. And on top of that, they also have lots of great stories and anecdotes about the interesting things they've been up to on their travels. So I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you will too. In this episode, we discuss Amy and Nick's background and how they got started with Pho, how to plan recurring segments and features to give episodes structure and enhance the listener experience, the value of not shying away from stating your honest opinions as a podcaster, how to come up with ideas for games you can play in your podcast. Amy and Nick explained how podcasting opened the door to lots of new opportunities and experiences for them while they were traveling, collaborating with other podcasters and YouTubers to help grow your own audience, running a Patreon account to give exclusive rewards to paying listeners, key tips on how to become a better and more efficient podcast editor, and lastly, Amy and Nick gave their advice on the different ways you can embed yourself in the local cultures while you're traveling. As always, you can find links to the things we mentioned in this episode on the show notes on the Podcast.co website. The link is in the description if you'd like to go there and learn more. But now, let's get into the conversation. Today, I'm joined by Nick and Amy Thomson. Thank you both for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Hello. Thanks, James.
So just to give listeners some context at the beginning here, we've actually worked together on a few projects through Podcast.co, and personally, I've always been really impressed with the quality of your audio production work. But this is the first time that we're actually sitting down and having a proper conversation, so I'm looking forward to kind of getting to know you guys a bit more, and I have no doubt that you'll have lots of useful things to share about planning, recording, and editing great episodes. But before we get into all that, I thought it would be good just to start with your own backgrounds first. So could you each introduce yourselves and tell us a bit more about the work you do at ANT Podcast Management?
Sure.
Go on, Amy. You started, because I think the brief background starts with your radio career.
Yeah, okay. So, when I was younger, when I was at university, I studied photography. And I really wanted to get into radio, so I started trying to get into uni radio, but that didn't really work out. It wasn't a big thing at my uni. Went to a place called CCR, which was like a community radio station. Long story short, ended up working at the BBC, which was incredible. Got to produce some mid-morning shows, and then kind of went through to podcasting that way.
Yeah, and because Amy was in radio, and especially because she was just starting her career, she wanted to do something a bit extra, because I feel like in a lot of these media jobs, especially when you're starting out, if you can show you're doing extra things on the side, employers are impressed by that. So she wanted to start a podcast, and it was going to be about travel, which is our passion. We'll talk about some travel soon, I'm sure. And Amy invited me on the podcast as her first guest to talk about travel, some of our adventures. I liked it so much that I decided I wanted to be a part of this, and I kind of took over, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, you kind of got involved and then didn't leave.
Yeah, and then I thought, I'm part of the show now. And we will go into the detail of this, but that podcast grew as we were making all the mistakes in the book with that podcast. Later on, we realized, oh, we've got all this podcasting experience. Maybe we can help other people, make their podcasts. And that's how our company was born. Ant Podcast Management, Amy, Nick Thomson. That's where the ANT comes from.
Nice. That's a nice kind of origin story there. So Amy, it was your idea, and Nick, obviously you got involved early on, but did you have any experience of podcasting or any radio media experience before you got involved and kind of took over the reins of the podcast?
Yeah, absolutely none, but I thought I was an expert only because even though I had no experience working in the industry, I was a radio and podcast listener, big time, because one of my old jobs, I drove a lot. So many hours listening to radio podcasts. So, I thought that I knew what the listeners want because I am one. So that's where I can't say expertise, but that's where that's how I could put something. That's what I could bring to the table, if you like. No proper experience, but I was a listener.
And also off the back of that, it was quite nice that with work, I had a partner that I could kind of bounce off of, ideas and stuff. Because he was such an avid listener, I could say to him, oh, what do you think about this? For work, for example, if I was thinking of a new feature for radio, he was really good to bounce off of. So even though you weren't working in it, he definitely had that experience of, understanding what works.
The ear.
He's got the professional ear, let's say.
Just out of interest, what were those early shows that you were kind of really getting into?
Okay, so it was a combination, radio and podcasting, all sorts of radio. This was when I was much younger, so things like Radio 1 or XFM, it's now Radio X, XFM, radio, but then it wasn't just about the music, they did fun features as well. And then
I was going to say Chris Moyles, really. When you say Radio 1 and then XFM, it's Chris Moyles.
That's true. It was
who
mainly.
You were listening to a lot.
And I know he's Marmite, but I think all great people who do anything, like artists or broadcasters, whatever they are, they've got to be doing stuff which is some people hate, but some people love. If you're in the middle, then I don't think you're pleasing anyone, if that makes sense. So I really liked him. Podcasting, it was mainly sports podcasts, so football, and also travel, which I guess will lead us on to a bit later on. All the travel podcasts I could find at the time, I thought were not very good. So I thought, let's make our own.
Nice. That's usually where the best content comes from. If you spot something and you're like, yeah, there's nothing great here, or this doesn't exist yet. Yeah, it's always a good idea to go do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Looking at what doesn't work, then it kind of pushes you to what does work. I was just going to interrupt and kind of name drop that I met Chris Moyles once, so I was quite happy to say that. I was part of my radio career. I wanted to be a presenter, and it was at Capital, wasn't it? Capital Extra. I was at an interview there to be a presenter, but Chris Moyles was in the studio next door and he was trying to put me off, basically, let's say. And I think I was on their podcast at the time, and he was talking to me through the other studio, asking what I was doing there and how the interview was going, and
I was listening to Chris Moyles' podcast and I could hear him say, oh, there's a girl in the other room. Oh, I think she's doing an interview, a demo. Let's try and distract her. And I thought, that's my girlfriend. Anyway.
I think, the main focus of the conversation today is obviously going to be about your podcast. So first of all, how would you summarize what the Pho Travel Podcast for people who haven't heard it before?
Do you want me to take this one?
You can go for it.
I would say it's a podcast, but it's like a radio show. So if you think back to the old Chris Moyles stuff where they'll play some games, some features, do some silly things, but the idea was always to educate and entertain. So each episode is about a different country or a specific travel topic. And the thing is, we'll probably go into this later if we're giving tips about podcasting, but you need to you need to grab someone's attention. Even back then, there wasn't that many podcasts around, and there are more now. So this is even more relevant to today. You can't just, or we thought we couldn't just click record and just talk about our holiday, because that would be too boring. So we had a load of features, some fun things, some games, split up the chat, maybe 10 or 15 minutes chat, and then we're doing something else, or we're interviewing a local, maybe when we were we were going through a favela in Brazil when we interviewed a local guy and we spoke about the gang culture in the favelas, in real interesting stuff, but mix that up with real stupid, funny, and at times very rude things. But I think at first, if I'm being honest, we wanted that kind of shock factor. Here we are. This is us. We're different from anyone else out there. And as the podcast went on, we found our groove and we became a bit more serious, even making some actual, real serious documentaries about serious issues around the world.
Yeah. It was, I was obviously reading the description for the podcast, and obviously you state up front, like, if you don't like a place, you're going to be honest about it and tell people like it is. And I was listening to one of the more recent episodes you produced in Mexico, and it was, I can't remember where it was in Mexico, but you compared the beach to like, it's kind of like Southend-on-Sea, like a bit grim, and not the kind of place that you want to go. And I was like, yeah, this is like, that really sums up, or you get a good sense of the vibe from the description, but I really like that.
Well, because if everywhere is fantastic, like, one, that's boring, and two, people won't believe us when it really is fantastic.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to be honest. And like, it is partly that shock culture. We want to be like, because I think if people want to hear a shocking episode, I'd listen to our Cuba episode, to be honest, because it's not a country we enjoyed whatsoever. A lot of bad stuff happened to us there, which, doesn't help, but yeah. So yeah, if anyone wants a shock factor one, Cuba's the one to listen to.
People prefer when bad things happen to us.
Oh, definitely.
I just feel like this is me now. This is me, the podcast editor. I feel like if anyone goes too far back, we were just like, please bear in mind, we were just starting out. We didn't really know what we were doing. So the quality varies from start to finish.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just like, that was one of the questions I had. Like, you've obviously gone to lots of different places, and some places might be less safe than others, but like, have you ever had, I don't know what happened in Cuba, I'm gonna go find out now, but was there any like equipment stolen or stuff that's happened because if you're recording, or have you got yourself in any tricky situations, basically, like recording the podcast and kind of being publicly out there with equipment and stuff like that?
Yeah, we're really lucky to say that we haven't had anything stolen from us. We've definitely met plenty of travelers who have been in that situation, whether it's just their phone or their entire bag and passport on a bus. I think we're very like vigilant travelers. Like, it doesn't matter how safe we feel. We always remember that bad stuff can happen here in Manchester, like, it doesn't have to be anywhere abroad. But kind of opposite to that, we always try to shout out the message that these countries that you have this preconception about, like, for example, Brazil, it's our favorite country in the world. We think it's incredible. The food, the people, everything about it is amazing. But a lot of people are like, oh, it's really dangerous there. Like, oh, you're so brave to go there. And it's like, well, it's not really. Like, the people are just so kind, aren't they?
Warm, friendly people.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what we tried to tell people. Like, yeah, be careful. And we were careful with our equipment. Unfortunately, no, we didn't have any stories, luckily, of losing equipment. The only thing I can think of with equipment maybe was like trying to enter Israel. Their borders, they're very suspicious anyway. And they're asking, why do you have this equipment? Are you spies? But that's
do you work for MI5?
As far as the podcast goes, that's the only minor mishap I can think of.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, but like, in terms of Cuba, very long story short, we were trying to find like a salsa club, because I was a salsa dancer, so it was always my dream to dance in Cuba. And we tried getting to a club and it was closing by that point. But this guy, it's one of those stories where you think like, why were we so trustworthy? But the guy was like, oh, this one's about to close, but I can take you to this other club. And we walked inside past this bouncer, and you just, when you get that gut feeling, there's something not right here. And the guy went to get us a drink. We were very wary about what he'd put in the drink, so we didn't drink it. And then he started demanding money from us. And then they wouldn't let us out of the club. Like, the bouncer was in on it as well. And we were kind of being circled by these people. And then, I had to kind of like squeeze under like this big bouncer's guy's arms and like kind of elbow him so that he would move, and then Nick could get out, and then we just ran away. Really, like,
we ran home.
It's one of those scenarios where like we are very trustworthy, because we're kind of like trust until you're given a reason not to, kind of thing. And we're like open. We want new experiences, and you have to trust people to do that. But yeah, sometimes it can lead you into tricky situations.
Yeah, well, there you go. Any other podcasters want to go to Israel, be prepared to, get your papers right at the border.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Straight.
Nick, you had mentioned previously about, like, you didn't want to just kind of sit behind the mics and tell the story of where you've been, and you kind of do switch it up in the formats of your episodes. So you have got like different types of episodes. So they're usually marked in your feed. You got learn, challenge, explore, and I was just interested, is that something that evolved gradually over time as the show grew, or is that something that from day one you were like, this is what we want to do and this is how we're going to produce it?
That did evolve, but actually the learn, challenge, explore, I feel like even with our company name, like ANT, Amy, Nick Thomson, we have hidden meanings behind things. It's actually, Amy, you made the logo for What the Pho, for our podcast, and it's hieroglyphics, like Egyptian hieroglyphics, and that's right, isn't it? It's 3 triangles.
Yeah.
And they each mean, well, one of them means challenge and the other means learn and explore.
Yeah, you can see it on our podcast logo, the 3 triangles, and one has a line underneath, one has one in between, and one has a circle. I actually have 2 of them tattooed on my ankles. Fun fact.
But that did evolve. It was originally just going to be us talking about countries. Once a month, one episode came out about a particular country, but then we switched it up, and halfway through the month, we then released an episode which was either learn, challenge, explore, and that was talking about a topic rather than a country.
Nice. So obviously, as you said, there is quite a lot of work that goes into producing your episodes. Like, you're recording interviews with different people, you're kind of writing or injecting bits of narrative script to tie the episodes together. There is a lot of moving parts compared with like a standard interview podcast like this. So I was wondering, could you kind of take us through your process of how you would go about putting an episode together and what that looks like for listeners?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, with the larger episodes where we're exploring a country or culture, that starts with us booking the flights, I guess, and just enjoying the trip. I think there's a few things that we know we can normally get a decent interview out of to kind of inject into the whole podcast, which is free walk-in tours, which you can do in pretty much any city around the world. I think they sound quite geeky when you explain what they are.
They'll change your life.
But yeah, Nick really opened my eyes to these. So yeah, you meet at like 11 o'clock. We're actually going to do one in Manchester this weekend. You meet in a place in the city and they take you around, because it's not just historical knowledge. They go into other things. Like here, apparently they're going to talk about the rave culture in Manchester, they teach you about the city and things to be wary of, stuff like that. So that's kind of a staple in our episodes, along with our other features. So we'll normally start an episode with a feature called Game Show Facts. And this is kind of Nick being able to geek out, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just 30 seconds, like fast.
It was a minute, I think.
Oh, you're right, a minute, just fast, quick facts with music behind. We put music in behind us. So yeah, we get facts about the country. While we're there, we try to get interviews. I remember often we're in a country and I'm thinking, like, we're leaving next week and I haven't got enough interviews yet and I'm stressing out. We did an episode about the Czech Republic and Slovakia because they used to be Czechoslovakia. And we'd got our Czech interview, great, literally Czech. But then we couldn't get we couldn't find a Slovakian person that was happy to be interviewed. And then finally, like on the last day, we did. But it almost like ruined the trip for me because I was just stressed the whole time. I was like, I'm thinking we can't make an episode if we don't have someone from Slovakia talking. So yeah, we get some facts together. We make sure we interview locals. Then when we've got those interviews, we structure, how are we going to introduce the interviews? How are we going to exit the interviews? Whereabouts are they going to go in the episode? And then come up with a game. And the games were...
That was always a really fun bit.
That was fun. And coming up with a name for the game was the first thing. And once you get a good name, then like you're ready to go. So like there was one...
I've got one in mind.
Oh, please go.
The Morocco... So our Morocco episode, I'm not sure the name works as well as we thought it did. So it's an innuendo game where Nick and I separately went off to plan whatever innuendo you can make up with something related to Morocco. So we just hit back and forth until we couldn't go anymore. But I think the game was called, rather than That's What She Said, it was That's What She Fez.
Genius.
The little
it
hat.
doesn't even work.
The little Moroccan hat. I think it's actually an Egyptian hat. So okay, maybe we're not. But That's What She Fez. And I thought, we've got it. And then it was like tennis back and forth of coming up with innuendos.
But I think that's kind of like the beauty. Like the name doesn't really work, but it's still funny anyway.
Oh, there was one for Egypt. Who do you thinks you are? Come on. Like, so once we've got the name for the game, then we have to come up with the actual game. And of course, it has to be entertaining as well. We did quite a lot of funny language translation games. You know, you speak into your phone and then it gives you the translation. We did that for a Japan episode. So that's how we structure it. Like game in the middle, facts at the beginning, interviews throughout, and then we tried to come up with some good stories of when we were in that country.
Nice. So yeah, if anyone else needs a good game, start with a name first and take it from there, and just crowbar in whatever works.
Definitely.
And you're off to the races.
Exactly.
I noticed as well as obviously recording all this stuff for the podcast, you have a YouTube channel and you're kind of vlogging and documenting stuff there. So is that just something that you kind of do alongside, or what's the connection between the content that you're getting for the podcast and the content that you're getting for the YouTube channel?
Yeah, I'd say the YouTube channel came later, and it definitely takes a back seat. Like we are very passionate about audio, and like I love consuming video content, but like Nick doesn't edit video, so any of the video stuff, it's just me when I get a spare moment. And actually, rather than it kind of increasing our podcast brand, it was more about us having our own souvenir of our trips that we could watch back. And just because I've made them, I put them on YouTube. It's not really something we've put a lot of work into, but even though like we have had quite a few nice comments on there, I mean, and some bad, you know, it's YouTube after all. Yeah, I think people get a little bit disturbed by one of our videos, so we changed the title of it, but it's about this very strange prison in La Paz in Bolivia. And basically, it's a whole world inside. It's got schools inside the prison, like
shops, restaurants. The prison's sponsored by
Coca-Cola. It's a very strange place. Yeah, it's very strange. But a lot of people were very annoyed that we didn't go inside the prison and interview people. And we were like, well, we
people
can't.
People were watching and they're like, rubbish video. You didn't even go in. Like, yeah, how are we going to go in? But
yeah,
the YouTube, that's Amy's thing. Blimey, podcasting is a lot of work. There's so many layers to putting together a good, engaging podcast. But video, that's a lot of work, video, and I wasn't prepared to get involved with it, to be honest. Podcasting, audio, that's our passion.
But I do love watching the videos back. It's so cool to see like the people that we met. Like for example, we've got a video on Israel and Palestine, and we stayed in a refugee camp there in Palestine, and got to stay with this amazing family that have children. And yeah, just kind of looking back on moments like that, it's priceless, really. So
it's the best souvenir.
But yeah, it's a souvenir.
Nice. Yeah, when you mentioned the prison in La Paz, I was kind of thinking of those Louis Theroux episodes where he goes into the San Quentin or whatever. It's pretty intense situations in there. It's like you need the armed guards beside you at all times in some of those situations. So yeah, I don't blame you for not going into the prison.
Thank you.
And do you feel that like I was thinking, because you're traveling to all these places and you obviously are recording at the time, does that give you access to situations or stuff that you wouldn't otherwise have? Are people more willing to, or do you think you have experiences that you wouldn't have otherwise? Basically, is the podcast enhancing your travel experience?
Yeah, 100%.
Definitely. One, mainly that you might not think I was going to say it first, but one that the podcast drives us to find interesting people to interview who then we hang out with and they become friends. So first of all, we meet amazing people because of the podcast, and yes, we end up going in amazing places because of the podcast. Do you want to tell the best story?
Are you talking about the Galapagos story?
Yes.
Okay. So not only has the podcast pushed us to meet incredible people around the world, it's also let us have free trips. So we got to work with like different tourist boards and tour companies, and we were in Ecuador, and their islands, they own the Galapagos Islands, and how many miles away are they? About 1,000 miles. So yeah, it's a decent plane journey away. And we're in Ecuador thinking, man, I really want to go to Galapagos, but
we have no money.
Not for that budget. We haven't got that kind of money for the rest of the trip. So Nick contacted, I think, 4 different cruise companies. Now, we've never been on a cruise, didn't think we were cruise people at all, but this is different because it's like an adventure cruise. He contacted 4 different companies. One actually came back to us saying, well, if you can get yourselves to the Galapagos Islands tomorrow, you have a cabin available like for free on our cruise. And we were like, no way. Now, we don't normally tell this because I think it makes us sound really stupid. We actually turned it down initially, at first.
Because the flights are expensive.
Like, I think it was going to cost like £800 for both of us return flight, which at the moment, like now, like I'd happily pay that knowing what the experience was. But at the time we weren't working. So we were on a year-long trip and we just didn't think that we could take it. And then the woman replied saying, I'm not sure you realize what you're turning down here. I think you should say yes. Long story short, we said yes. And it was just the most incredible thing. We were like in the middle of an Attenborough documentary, I swear. One night we had about 500 sharks surrounding our cruise ship. We were in the water at one point while some pelicans were feeding, and they were just like diving into the water right around us. It was incredible, wasn't it?
Swimming with sea lions and all the big lizards that you see, the giant tortoises, not turtles, the giant tortoises. And yeah, so the deal was we could have a spot on this ship for free if we made a podcast for the company to promote what they do. So we're on the ship, we're interviewing the captain, we're interviewing the tour guides, and we put together this about hour and a half episode promoting that company. So yeah, to answer your question, the podcasting definitely helped open some doors.
Amazing. Yeah, that sounds like an incredible trip. Very lucky. I'm glad that you reversed your decision and just saw the error in your ways. And
yeah, well, idiots.
Yeah.
Meet the Podcasters is brought to you by Matchmaker.fm, the largest online platform connecting podcasters with great guests. Whether you're looking for a qualified expert to feature in your next episode, or you'd like to get booked as a guest yourself, you can sign up today for free. Simply create your profile and get instant access to a growing database of more than 40,000 hosts, producers, and subject matter experts from around the world. You can filter profiles by category, location, and language spoken to quickly pinpoint the right guests and shows. And if you need help promoting your own episodes, you can find lists of other podcasters open to ad swaps and cross promotions. Join the community, record better content, and reach a wider audience. Try it out today by heading to matchmaker.fm or clicking the link in the description. And now, let's get back to the episode.
So obviously, like the show's been going for a while, and I think probably the main reason why you've been able to build an audience and kind of be successful at what you do is the quality of the content itself. Like when you want to grow a podcast, number one is like the content has to be great to begin with. But aside from that, is there anything else in your experience over the years that you've noticed that has been particularly effective in kind of bringing new listeners in? There is no real like shortcuts or hacks that will instantly get you more listeners, but I'd just be interested to hear from your guys' perspective if there was anything that you found that kind of helped accelerate the growth of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say social media is a big one. It's obvious, but particularly Twitter and Instagram, but particularly Twitter's a good way to reach people who otherwise wouldn't know you exist. So social media, we're far from social media experts, but we had to, we gave it a go, and that definitely helped. Getting guests on your podcast who have big audiences themselves, but of course you have to convince those people in the first place. Why should they come onto your show if you've only got like 6 people that listen to you? So it is tough. It's like chicken and the egg. But yeah, good content. What I like to say is if I'm giving someone some real advice, and this isn't just just be yourself or work hard. Real advice, although you should be yourself, because if you're not genuine, people can hear it. Let alone see it, they can hear it if you're not yourself. But what I say to people is, if you want to start a podcast, why are you doing it? Do you want it to be big, or are you doing it just for fun? So even if no one listens, you've enjoyed it, so who cares? If that's the case, fine, do what you want. But if you want to grow it, if you want people to listen, think to yourself, what can I say, or what can I do? What can I say that people aren't already saying? Am I just a copy of what's already out there, or do I actually have something different and unique to offer? So really ask yourself, look in the mirror, ask yourself that question. If the answer is yes, actually what I'm going to say, the idea of my show is unique, it's completely different to what's out there right now, then you're already halfway to putting something together, with a good bit of editing. You're already halfway to putting something together which should resonate with people and should grow.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's Yeah, like podcasting is not easy, and you do have to have some kind of vested interest or curiosity to kind of pursue. And there's going to be time, like it's going to be hard if you want to release content consistently, and not having. I think a lot of people these days kind of, with all the hype around podcasts, and they see it as like a get rich quick thing, or I'm just going to jump in and do 6 episodes and all of a sudden I'm going to be the next Joe Rogan or whoever it might be. But yeah, like you said, having that vested interest and carving out your own niche. And what can you say? What is unique about your perspective or your background that can add something different to the conversations that are already going on? In that answer, Nick, you did touch on kind of linking up with other people who have audiences and stuff. And I noticed that a few of your episodes, you've linked up with other podcasters in the past to produce episodes with them, usually if they're from a particular country or whatever. So is that like a kind of cross-promotion thing that you do with those podcasters, or is it just you're solely working with them on your show?
Yeah, I think we've also had some like YouTubers on there. Like, for example, someone who we invited on and has now actually become a friend of ours, a guy called Carl Watson. He'll love that we're name dropping him right now.
Shout out, Carl.
But yeah, he's someone who has a big following. So yeah, I was going to say after
we used him.
We used and abused him, absolutely. But I think something that you could learn from us is that get it in place that there's a condition that when they come on the podcast that they have to promote it when it's out, because that happened a lot to us. We didn't make that clear, and then once they're on the podcast, once it was finished, edited and out there, we'd say, here's the podcast for you to promote, and then they wouldn't always promote it. I'm not saying Cole did this, by the way.
The opposite. No, he absolutely
he was good.
did. Yeah.
But yeah, always making sure that is kind of the condition that they are then gonna, because yeah, we didn't really cross promote in terms of us going on their channel. I don't think. I'm trying to remember.
Not some proper cross promotion. We've had it suggested to us before, but then this gets difficult and awkward, and we've probably been both sides of this before. But if someone does approach, and it's very nice, someone approaches and said, "Oh, can I come on your show? You can come on mine." If you have to kind of keep your own integrity and think, fine, we'll do that, but only if you actually agree what the other person is doing is any good. Because like
have standards basically.
No, but it's true, because then if we have to promote them, we're only going to do it if we actually if we also think your stuff is good. And again, we might have been both sides of it. Maybe we've approached people when they thought, oh, I don't want to promote what those guys are doing, and that probably has happened before. But that's where it can get awkward. You can't just for the sake of it, yeah, I'll promote you, because then your own listeners are going to think that we've kind of sold out,
Yeah, and off the back of that, I remember we were asked to join into this like social media group, and it was part of this podcast family, if you will, network. And it wasn't just travel based podcasts; it was every topic you can think of. And they were like, "Yeah, we're all joining in, and it's like once you upload an episode, we'll do reviews for you if you do reviews for us." And we turned it down because like if you want to do it, if someone else wants to do that, but like for us, we were like, I don't want our name, like someone can read our review and us going, wow, this is an awesome podcast when it isn't. And we're just doing it just to get that love back. I think like as we said earlier about being authentic, not only do we want to be authentic, we want authentic reviews. We want authentic listeners, people who really like our podcast,
Yeah, I'd rather have 20 great genuine reviews rather than 100 fake, bot reviews. But something I just thought of very quickly, best tip everyone's going to hear of the episode, best podcasting tip, learn how to speak first, but then don't make a podcast where you say, oh, we just talk about anything.
Yes.
Never do that, because surprise, surprise, if you try to talk to everyone, you'll talk to no
Nick,
one.
I could not agree more. This is the thing that we see time and time again. It's like chats with Dave, and it's like, well, what are you chatting about, Dave? And why are people going to listen to this show? And I think that was a really interesting point that you made about kind of quality control in terms of who you associate yourself with and who you position yourself beside, because that obviously will rub off on your show, and to be careful about that kind of stuff. If you're putting all the effort in to create good quality content, you only want to associate yourself with good quality content. There was just one thing I wanted to follow up on in terms of what you said there, Amy, about working with other podcasters or YouTubers and not having that agreement in place, this is just like a minor technical question, but do you get like a verbal agreement from it, or are you making them sign something, or how are you setting it up so it's like when this is released, you're going to help us promote it?
Yeah. Well, we didn't do it. That's what I mean by learn from us. We didn't do it. But what would I do now? I guess I feel like them signing it depends. I feel like it depends on the level of your podcast. Like if you're getting millions of downloads, like you probably want to get them to sign something. But if it's like a low level thing and it's like a hobby, I mean, as long as you have it in email and you just have that discussion with them, then I think it's okay. Like even with ours, like we got and by the way, we're talking in past tense because we haven't released much recently. Obviously with COVID, we haven't been able to travel, but we will be releasing again. But
it's that kind of gentleman's agreement, and what's the female word for gentleman? Gentlewoman agreement, but just over email, something in writing. But yeah, we've never. I would normally say not to sign something.
Yeah, that's fair. I do obviously want to touch on the COVID situation and how that affected what you're doing, but just before we touch on that, there's just one more kind of technicality or to do with the monetization and sponsorship side of things. So I noticed you have like an affiliate link with Airbnb established with your podcast, and obviously that's something a lot of podcasters are interested in, like how can I make some kind of monetary return on what I'm doing. So how did that come about? Was that something that you had to go out and actively negotiate yourselves?
So no, that was just the generic, like what Airbnb offer. You can sign up and you get a link, and then every time someone books, we get a little bit of money. That actually didn't bring in too much for us, but what did work was Patreon, or Patreon, however you're supposed to say it. So I think the best thing is like many things, multiple streams of income. We've got a website selling t-shirts. That made us some money. Patreon, where people can sign up and then they pay a little bit and then they can listen to episodes early, so they get rewards for paying. Sponsor as well. Yeah, there was a couple of times there might be a company that sponsors a particular episode. That Galapagos cruise, for example, they pretty much, I can safely say they sponsored that episode, because what that would normally cost for us to do that cruise, wow, that's a lot of thousands.
$12,000.
But yeah, that's how much the cruise is. It's mad. So they sponsored that. But we had a sponsor once. There's a company called Storyteller. They sell like these little keychains, and some money goes towards good causes around the world, which we really like that. It was in line with kind of what we're doing, what we're trying to do, spread goodness around the world. And it was back kind of in the early days. They just covered our costs, the fee to host the website online. And that was through, actually, they followed us, we followed them on Twitter, got chatting, we went to their office to have a chat. So we made that happen ourselves, rather than go down a route where sign up here and we'll find you a sponsor. We actually made it happen for ourselves, but multiple ways of doing it. Like I said, Patreon, selling t-shirts, things like that.
And off the back of that, I think it drives home that message again of being authentic. Like we saw that brand, we kind of had a relationship with them already. So we thought, oh, this is great. And like Nick's career background's in sales. So, he's good at that kind of thing. I like to say he's not a sleazy sales guy though.
I'm not.
But and it was a brand that sat with our podcast. It was travel related. It was these keychains that they're really classy actually. Like you collect flags from around the world, but part of that money goes towards creating schools and education for children in India. And I think they might be working in other countries as well now. But it's just such a great message to be putting out there, and knowing that our podcast can help children's education in India is incredible. But I think main advice from that is don't just get any sponsor. If you're a travel podcast, don't have like a shampoo brand as your sponsor, because I know everyone uses shampoo, but it's not that directly related to travel.
Yeah, there's like the Casper mattresses and how are there all these mattress companies? That's what I don't understand. But obviously the market is there, people are buying them, so what do I know?
Everybo's got to sleep.
Yeah.
True.
So just kind of last point on the podcast, obviously you mentioned COVID has kind of put a dampener on what you plan to do, but I was just wondering, like, did you have big trips lined up and COVID kind of cancelled them, or is there stuff that you're eager to do when you can travel again? Just kind of what the situation is there and how you're planning on getting going again.
Yes and yes. Do you want to talk about a trip that was cancelled?
What trip?
South Africa.
Oh, okay.
Well, we just had it wasn't actually a big travel trip. It was more like a holiday to go to South Africa last Christmas and New Year's. That was cancelled. We would be, because of our business, because we work online, we can be anywhere really. So once companies open, once restrictions are lifted even more, we do have plans to travel, but it'll be different from last time. Last time, we were unemployed, we were broke, we were backpacking, every 3 days we were on to the next destination. This time, the business is the main focus, but we can do it from anywhere. So the idea is to get an Airbnb for 2 or 3 months, live and work, and then move on to another city or another country. So travel definitely is in our planning, is on the horizon, I should say. Starting with a trip to Bali. Flights are booked, but if it will go ahead, we're not sure. But we've got plan Bs and plan Cs, and we'll go somewhere, anywhere that will accept us.
But going back to COVID, it's weirdly worked out with our schedule. It's almost like the world knew, because we just finished our year and a bit trip and we just got back. I think it was November, and then gave us time to find an apartment, somewhere to live, and get our lives back up and running again with jobs. And then COVID hit. So luckily Nick had a job. I was starting with this Ant podcast management. At the time, I didn't realize it was going to develop into this kind of company. It accidentally happened. But yeah, it kind of worked on our timescale. We knew we wanted to come home and save money again and become normal human beings, not like dirty backpackers. So yeah, it worked with our schedule. But yeah, we want to become digital nomads, and that's what our company's allowing us to do. We'll be traveling around the world, moving different countries every 3 months or so, however the visa allows us. And we think it's going to be an incredible lifestyle.
Nice. Yeah, that's like what I wanted to talk about next, is the company and what you guys are doing with it. So the plan is to take your work on your travels with you, is that right? Yeah, and just do it while you're visiting different places, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. So that will always take priority, keeping the company going, looking after clients. And like I said before, everything we've done so far, it's all online. We haven't had to physically, especially during COVID, during all the lockdowns, a lot of studios have been closed anyway, and I'm sure we would have gone in person to some studios, but there are studios all around the world. Everything we do is online. So yes, we do want to travel and keep the business going. We're actually used to working with different time zones anyway. Most of our clients are based in the USA. I say most, maybe half. It's about half of our clients are probably based in the USA. So we're working with different time zones anyway. I can't see what difference it will make where we are in the world, as long as we've got internet connection, because the majority of what we do is editing. So we do offer, we can record and present if that's what a client wants us to do, but most of what we do is editing. So we're on our laptops all day, every day, answering emails, editing podcasts, and we can do that from anywhere.
And do you work with your clients as well alongside the editing on concept development, or do you give your input on a creative level in terms of what they're doing? Because sometimes, speaking from experience with people we've worked with at Podcast.co, businesses might have a certain idea for what they want to do, but we'll have our thoughts on what they maybe should change or tweak. And is there anything, I suppose the question is what do you think, if businesses are thinking about starting a podcast, what are the key things that they should know or kind of be aware of in terms of coming up with a concept for the show?
Yeah, I'd say from the start with this business, it was mainly editing. We showed ourselves as editors, when now we're really developing, so we can do anything from producing, presenting, and really offer that whole scale of production, really.
From beginning to end.
Yeah. So we like to offer everything, but I think it comes with time, doesn't it? We like to say that editings are the thing that we geek out on. It's the thing that we really love doing. So start with your strongest element and build out from there, I'd say.
Also, what I'd add to that is kind of what you were saying, James. You're working with a company and they might have very strong ideas about what they want to do, but yeah, we've given our experience in podcasting, we might know a bit better. Actually, if you just I like what you're saying, but tweak that, and it would appeal to more people. It's often knowing when your opinion's welcome or not. Because if someone wants us to just edit their podcast, we're not getting paid to give our opinion. We'll edit what they give us, and that's it. But yeah, if we're brought on board as producers, then of course we're being paid to give our opinion. And what I would say to businesses, if you are looking for a company to help you make your podcast, if that company specializes in podcasts, then listen to their opinions, take on what they're saying, because why employ someone to help with this if you're just going to do it all yourself anyway? It's a bit like, a silly example might be, why employ an interior designer if you disagree with all their ideas for what your house should look like? You're employing the expert, let them do their job.
Good point. And just given that you guys, your specialty is editing, and that's kind of the core of the business, is there any tips or advice that you would give to kind of independent podcasters about that side of things? Because a lot of people can get lost in the weeds with editing and it can become a bit overwhelming. And is there anything that you found that kind of helps you be more efficient and really get the job done well?
I think
good question.
What I would say straight away is practice. Like, you can't just maybe you can't just do a course or maybe watch a couple of YouTube videos and then, right, I'm an editor now. Like, we practiced for years making What the Pho, and that's why I said back at the beginning of this interview, if people want to listen, great, but if they go far back enough, they'll think these guys are terrible editors. But that's because we were learning. So do it first for free because you enjoy it. This is what I'd say to anyone in any creative industry, and this is what's so great about the internet. If you've got some sort of skill, you could be a video editor, podcast editor. Keep practicing because you're happy to do it even though you're doing it for free. Keep practicing, and you get an ear for these things. And yes, there's lots of YouTube videos out there, and you can see how other people are doing things. But after a while of so much practice, you just know, you think that doesn't sound right, and you know what you have to do to fix that problem, and that only comes with experience and practice.
And then when you're first starting editing, my first bit of advice is keep it natural. If you're trying to edit out a word, like an for example, and it's joining another word, like I think, like that, like it's going to be really difficult for you to take that out. So leave it. If you can't make it sound natural, undo and leave it, because that isn't the worst thing in the world. I mean, obviously, if it's a swear word or something you really need to take out, then you're gonna have to work hard at it. But yeah, just from the beginning, just only take out what sounds natural, I would say.
Sometimes less is more, and actually that's a great tip. That's much better than what I said.
Yeah, because it can start to sound a bit strange and clipped, and you just know listeners might not necessarily understand why it sounds weird, but it's that clipping out all these ums and ahs, and it's weird that because listening back to previous interviews I've done and stuff, and I hear myself making ums and ahs, and I just want to get rid of them all, and you kind of go down this rabbit hole of like, there's another one, I just need to eliminate all of these from everything, and it's like your ear becomes so sensitized to these tics and vocal or phrases that you kind of overuse, but it does sound more natural in some cases. I mean, if it's really bad, then it might need a bit of work, but I think that's really good advice on editing.
Yeah, and I've actually seen, we did this, I think, at the start, and I see people do it a lot, other editors. Yeah, it's just, there's a temptation to make everything too neat and tight. So, you might ask us a question. There will normally be about a second or two silence between you asking the question and us answering it. But I think people are quite obsessed with taking out empty space, and then it all just sounds too fast and, too chaotic. So let it breathe. Sometimes less is more. Yeah,
the beauty of editing is if somebody listens back and doesn't hear that it's edited, then you're a good editor.
That's it.
Nice. Those are really great tips, and I think that'll be really valuable for the people that are listening. And I just wanted to kind of close the interview just by taking it back to the travel again, because I'm sure you've told me lots of stories so far, and I'm sure you got a few more. One of the things that I noticed as I was listening to some of your content is, obviously you mentioned before that the podcast puts you in connection with local people and people who know the area, and that kind of really enhances your travel experience. But for other people, if they're going on a holiday, maybe they're not producing a podcast, and like thinking about myself, I would have I would have anxiety about like how am I going to infiltrate the locals or like get in. I just
infiltrate the locals.
I don't know how I would go about that. So just any advice you have for people that are traveling and kind of want to enhance their experience and get more out of the places that they go to.
Yeah, that one's actually a very easy question. Sign yourself up to a website called Couchsurfing. This is what we did. This is how we found all the local people. It's our secret little trick. So yeah, if nobody knows what Couchsurfing is, it's a website where it's a bit like Airbnb, but it's free, and you kind of make friends and you talk to people, and if you've got the same interests, you ask, can I stay at your place? I'm going to be in your city at this time. And you can stay, just one night. We've heard people staying for like 3 months for free in people's houses. Like, it's pretty crazy. But also, I like to point out that couch surfing doesn't mean you're literally sleeping on the couch. It's like Airbnb. You can filter what you want. You want your own room. You want an actual bed. Like, you want a place in the city. All of that. Like, it's the same thing. And because I think a lot of our friends think that we literally lived like homeless people when we traveled, but we didn't. Like, sometimes we were staying in incredible apartment blocks that had swimming pools and stuff, like all for free.
But so like, if this is all free, like who's benefiting from this? Or like, there's no such thing as a free lunch. So like, what's going on there?
Yeah,
absolutely.
You know what? I've noticed through COVID, the website Couchsurfing, they are actually asking for donations. It's either donations or you now pay to sign up. Where I think
you always had to pay for an account, but if you host people, this is what we did.
Oh yeah.
So if you host, you don't have to pay for your account because you're allowing people into your home. But yeah, if you don't want to do that, then you have to pay a subscription fee. I'm not sure how much it is, but yeah, in terms of like who's benefiting, why would people do this? Like, I believe it's 3 guys that set this up, and they wanted to travel around the world and had these amazing experiences, and they wanted to connect people. And I think they have a tagline of like, a stranger is just a friend you haven't met yet. Like, and like we said, like every story we have on our podcast, I think is thanks to Couchsurfing. Like, from staying with a guy in Bolivia in La Paz to, I don't know, like in Brazil. Like in Brazil, we stayed with different people in every city, and now they're like we WhatsApp them more than our closest childhood friends now. Like, if you look for our WhatsApp, you've got Brazilian, Argentinian, like Chilean, like, yeah, it's amazing.
And also through Couchsurfing in Jordan, we went to the World Wonder Petra. We were staying in like this traditional tent right outside the World Wonder. We're staying for free. We're with these 2 brothers. We had so much fun with these guys, and just asking, innocent but stupid questions about each other's culture, because you don't get the chance to do this often. You hear things about their country, but you don't know if they're true. So yeah, Couchsurfing for sure is our secret to getting to know locals. But if you want to interview someone, you said about infiltrating locals, if it's like a walking tour guide, who we, like Amy talked about earlier, we often interview them, or a company, you have to let them know, I'm recording a podcast. Sometimes you have to explain what a podcast is. Not so much these days, but you used to have to describe what it is. But if you let them know, we're doing this for this reason, but it will benefit you guys because we can promote what you're doing and therefore get you more customers. So if you make sure they know what's in it for them from the start, they'll be way more receptive.
Nice.
And then I've got another one, if that's okay. Now, a lot of people find it quite shocking because it's on films and it never goes too well, but hitchhiking. We have some incredible stories from hitchhiking. We first tried it in Argentina because there's a hitchhiking website, and it said it was one of the safest countries to do it. So we thought, great, why not try it in Argentina? But we were couch surfing at someone's house. They dropped us on the main road on the way to, I think, Buenos Aires or somewhere like that. And I kid you not, 5 minutes later, we'd been picked up by this couple who are now our Argentinian parents. I think it just started to rain, and they felt bad for us because we were right by this petrol station. They were like, "Oh, let's pick them up." And they're the most incredible couple. They had this really nice car. They're both doctors, so we were picked up and looked after very well. But like 10 minutes into being in the car, we were getting on so well. They even offered to host us when we got to Buenos Aires. They were like, "You can stay in our apartment if you like." Like, I think is what I was saying earlier. You've got to be a bit trustworthy and know that everything's going to be okay. As long as, I'm not saying be stupid. We took so many precautions with hitchhiking, knowing that, like, telling multiple people where we were going to go, what our plan was. Don't do it alone.
At night.
I don't like telling females not to do it, because I don't like that. I think women should be able to explore as much as men. But yeah, just making sure people know where you are and where you want to head to, and I don't know, have a tracker on your phone, stuff like that. But yeah, always take safety precautions, but don't let like fear stop you from doing things.
I think that's good advice. It's definitely something I could learn from. I think I'm a bit of a cautious person in that regard. So were you literally there on the side of the road with your thumb out, like traditional?
Yep.
Nice.
Oh yeah, we were doing that. We even got a sign, because actually I think the first time we were trying to go to Mendoza, is that right?
Cordoba, I think.
Okay, so the sign said that, and actually that day it was the first time we'd ever done it. So and it went really well. I think we then got in a truck with a lorry truck with this guy who couldn't speak any English. Like, luckily I can speak some Spanish, but we were asking him what music he liked, and he came up with the strangest one we did not expect. Do you want to say?
Yeah, so he couldn't speak a word of English. Oh, what music do you like? I like Robbie Williams.
And you sound like Borat.
Oh, yeah, okay, that wasn't a good Argentinian accent. I like Robbie. But we're listening to Robbie Williams in this truck it's somewhere in Argentina, and he was the nicest guy ever.
Love it.
And
Angels, classic.
Yeah,
we were singing.
I think we had like lighters or our phone lights going in the truck, like as if we're at a festival.
And yeah, these are the highlights of travel, and that they happen when we kind of let go of control, opened ourselves up to other people, to strangers, and that's when the best things happened, to be honest.
And then just one quick little story about hitchhiking. That day went so well. So not everything goes well, guys.
Nice.
So
it's a roller coaster of emotions.
So that day went really well. A few days later, we were trying to get a bus somewhere else, and we couldn't get a ticket for some reason, and we'd have to stay waiting in the bus station for like 6 hours. And we're like, we can get there in 6 hours if we just hitchhike.
Easy.
So we got a taxi out to like a main road basically, and we were stood there for hours in the pure sun, got sunburn. I think we got like 6 or 7 different rides. We got there eventually, but it was hard. No one wanted to pick us up. Nick ended up dancing just to show that like
that works.
We look like nice people. It was very strange. One woman picked us up with her daughter in the car, and they were going to pick up like an outfit for her quinceañera, which is like a 15th birthday. And I was really surprised. Like, she had her daughter in the car, and she just picked up 2 strangers. Like, you'll be amazed the kindness / I don't know. I don't want to say stupidity, but yeah, like, people pick you up, and they were just looking out for us. They were like, it's not safe doing this, and we're like, we know, everybody says that.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that, like, it is safe and that hitchhiking's back on. You never see people in the UK doing it. I remember, like, growing up, like, my cousins, I was back in Ireland, and like one of them hitchhiked from the town that I grew up in to 30 minutes down the road. I just couldn't believe it at the time. I was like, what? That's insane. Like, but there you go. It can be done. Thank you so much for kind of sharing all the stories with me today and coming on this show. Where should people go to connect with you, find out more about what you do, and listen to your podcast?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the best way at the moment for people to contact us is our company website, to be honest, which is Ant Podcast Management. Just Google that and you'll find it, ANT. But yeah, What the Pho. So What the Pho, and Pho is PHO. What the Pho Travel Podcast. We haven't released anything for a while, but the plan is we will when we travel again. We're on all the usual social medias. Yeah, What the Pho Travel Podcast.
Lovely. Well, great. Everyone head there and check those out. And as I said, it's been a real pleasure to kind of sit down and speak with you both, get to know you more. We have done work before, but I really enjoyed the conversation today. So thanks again for taking the time.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thanks
really
for
good.
having us.
Cheers, James.
That's it for this episode. Thank you for taking the time to tune in. If you enjoyed the conversation or found it useful, please do hit the like and subscribe buttons. Look, it only takes a couple of seconds for you to do, but it really does make a huge difference to myself and to Ben, who's done a great job behind the scenes on all the recording, editing, and post-production work on this series. If there are any podcasters you'd like to see in the next season or topics you'd like us to cover in the future, the best place to leave us that feedback is in the YouTube comments section. Alternatively, you can leave the show a rating and review on Apple Podcasts if you're listening rather than watching. That helps us keep the algorithmic overlords of the audio world happy. Lastly, if it feels right to you, please do tell the other podcasters or aspiring podcasters in your life about the show, as that's still one of the best ways we have to reach the right people with this content. That's it for me. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.